President Donald Trump ambushed South African counterpart Cyril Ramaphosa on Wednesday by playing him a video that he claimed proved genocide is being committed against white people, driving farmers to flee to the United States. With reporters present, Trump asked staff put the 4-minute video on a large screen, saying he showed black South African politicians calling for the persecution of white people. Trump also showed news clippings that he said backed up his claims, although one actually featured a photo from the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, the South African president disputed Trump's claims, and after initially appearing stunned by the move, he stayed calm, avoiding the kind of row Trump had with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in February. He also insisted that most victims of South Africa's notoriously high crime rate are black, and said the politicians in the video were from the opposition. Meanwhile, a U.S. judge on Friday temporarily blocked the Trump administration from revoking Harvard University's ability to enroll foreign students, a policy the Ivy League school called part of President Donald Trump's broader effort to retaliate against it for refusing to surrender its academic independence. The order provides temporary relief to thousands of international students who were faced with being forced to transfer under a policy that the Cambridge, Massachusetts-based university called a blatant violation of the U.S. Constitution and other federal laws, and said will have an immediate and devastating effect on the university and more than 7,000 visa holders. I'm now being joined here on This Day Live by policy scholar, theorist, public administrator, leading scholar on elections and federalism, and renowned professor of political science, Professor Adele Jinadu, to do an overview of President Trump's approach to African issues and his actions against Harvard University. Good to have you here on This Day Live, Professor Jinadu, and thank you for joining us.
As I normally call you in other contexts, Oga, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Well, very quickly.
I think, sorry.
Okay.
I think Trump has an unconventional approach to politics. And I say it's unconventional because, unlike most politicians, he does not pretend, he does not dissimulate, he does not dissemble, and he tells it like it is in terms of what he feels, knowing that he has a constituency out there that believes in what he says and expects that kind of behavior from him. But I also think that we need to place it in the context of the history of U.S. relations with Africa over several years. And what Trump is doing may be some kind of an overkill. But at least for me, it is in line with, over 50, 60 years of more or less U.S. condescending approach to Africa. And that the black constituency in the U.S. over the years, at least over the past 3 or 4 administrations, the black caucus has dwindled, and its relevance has more or less been greatly diminished because the whole issue of the struggle for liberation in Southern Africa, the race issue in the U.S. have both gone under they're not in the limelight of U.S. politics. So I'm not really surprised that what seems to be kind of worrisome about the Trump approach is that the liberal foundations of the educational system in the UK are coming under direct attack by him. But again, this is what he made clear before he ran for office, and Americans voted for him. So he could in fact say that he has a mandate. So I think when Africans look at what he's doing, they must also look at it in the context of US politics and the fact that, one, this was made clear by him during elections. And there are different views, different viewpoints on what liberal education should be about or democracy should be about in the US. And he belongs to one extreme end of that spectrum. And number two, there are important guardrails in the US to push back against, even if it is his mandate, to push back that this is not our own vision of America. You have your own vision of America, but this is not our own vision of America. And they are pushing back. And I think the lesson for Africa is that we also must, as much as we tolerate different viewpoints, if you don't go to the extreme, and what is extreme can be debatable in circumstances, but we do have sincere, honest debate over what democracy implies, and not just the politics of no ideology, the politics of convenience, the politics of self-interestedness. So I'm not so much worried about Trump because there are guardrails. And this is not the first time it's happening in American politics.
Okay, but Prof, let's talk about Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa. Opinion is divided. Some people are saying that he was humiliated and that he went there just to massage Donald Trump's ego. Do you think that there was a failure in terms of standing up for his country on his part, considering the fact that $6 billion worth of trade is at stake? The U.S. has been blackmailing South Africa, including expelling the South African envoy, including accusing South Africa of opposing American foreign policy ideals, including the allegations of genocide. But President Ramaphosa went there and he was able to handle Trump so nicely. He even went with his golfer, his friends who are golfers, and he even got the opportunity to have a lunch, unlike Zelensky, who was driven away from the White House in February. Do you think that President Ramaphosa went there and he just allowed himself to be humiliated?
No, I take a different view. I praise Ramaphosa for respecting the dignity of the Oval Office, the dignity of the office of the President of the USA, and of his own office as the President of a sovereign country. So if you did not like the way you were treated, you could make it your point in more subtle ways than overreacting and being disrespectful, not to the person I'm talking to, but the office. There's a mistake around the presidential office. I mean, even if you're a president, that is the power of center of political power in the U.S., and it reflects what the whole of America stands for. Even if you are disappointed by the behavior of whoever is the current president, I think he showed respect for the office of the presidency, but he still made his points. We can question whether he was forceful enough in responding, or whether he should have taken more blacks on his team to the White House to make the case for what South Africa was doing. But I think basically, the way I saw him was that if it appeared as if he was cowed by Trump, I think we need to also say that he showed a respect for the office of the President of the office of any head of state anywhere must be treated with dignity, even if you feel offended.
Okay, Prof, you spent your entire life in the academic system.
Yeah.
Now, Trump, through the Homeland Security Department, is withdrawing the right of Harvard University to admit international students, to grant them visas. Trump, White House, is dictating academic curriculum, and Harvard is fighting back. Harvard went to court last month. Harvard went to court again last week, and on Friday, a judge granted an interim injunction to say until the matter is determined, Trump cannot stop funding for Harvard. What do you think is happening? Harvard University has been there since 1636. It's the oldest and one of the most prestigious universities in the world. As an academic, how do you feel about this?
As somebody who went to Oxford University in England for my first degree, I value the content of liberal education. But I think it's also important, as I said earlier, to put this in the context of domestic politics in the US. Over the years, there has been concern that the country was moving far too much to the left. It's not just in education. The fundamental issues of sex, of police brutality, and so on and so forth. All these go to the heart of conflict over what democracy means in America in the context of the US Constitution. And you listen to debate in the US, there are serious issues on both sides. And as I said earlier on, Trump made it clear that the country was going too far to the left, and he was going to attack the institutions that uphold what he called that, denial, attack on American values. And American people voted for him. And the point I'm also making is that what liberal education should be is also a matter of contention. And what I find interesting, as I said, is that people are now pushing back against that idea that Trump is pushing forward. And the costs are there, the guardrails are there, the legislature are there, even the Americans themselves are there, and another opportunity will come for them soon. But the point I also want to make is that this is not the first time that even on the left, have criticized American democracy. Herbert Marcuse talks of repressive tolerance, that all this talk of freedom, blah, 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 is just a mistake. That elections in America and in liberal do not remove the masters or the slaves. And that is what he meant by repression. The fact that you are voting regularly does not mean that you are actually free. So I think the important point to make here is that there is a fundamental debate about the nature of education in the US, which was part of the debate during the elections. And he made it clear that this is what he was going to do. The details may not be clear. People were not expecting to go this far, but he made it clear that this is what he was going to do. And the Americans voted for him. And whether they voted rightly or wrongly, or whether their belief is right or wrong, or whether they want to push back the democratic tradition in the US, it's left, one, for the courts to decide. And they've gone to the courts now. And that's where you go when you have different interpretations of what this aspect of democracy should be about. And then ultimately, even if it's an autocrat now, it's only so for the next 2 or 3 years. And the people will go back to the vote, and it will go back to them to ask for mandate. And remember what the British philosopher said. Every 4 or 5 years, the British go to the polls. They think they are free, but in reality, they are not free. For the first 4 years they are in office, the politicians are more or less, and I think, so that is what we should look at in terms of what are the guardrails to push against this viewpoint of, because democracy is about contention. These concepts are all what they call contested concepts. Democracy, we all have different, well, it means something to you, it means something to me. They are contested. And I think we tend to, in this country, have the view that concepts are absolute. It's either you have democracy or you don't have it. It's either you have freedom or you have federalism or you don't. So true democracy, true federalism. But these are contested concepts.
Okay, Prof, as you begin to summarize, let's come back home. In neighboring Côte d'Ivoire, there were rumors of a coup on Wednesday. All of this linked to the fact that President Alassane Ouattara wants to do a 5th term in office. He has done 4 terms. In the elections in October, he's still saying he wants to go to the polls. Tijan Thiam, who wants to also contest on the platform of the Democratic Party, he has been banned from contesting on the grounds that he has dual nationality, even if he said that he had renounced that dual nationality and that he was born in Ivory Coast and that he has every right to be president. Now, you've written a lot about democratic consolidation and the retreat from the wave of democratization. Alassane Ouattara used to be somebody everybody looked at as a model.
He
What's
also
wrong
fought
with these
against
people?
Extension for another president before him.
Yes, against Laurent Gbagbo.
Yeah, and we know what that happened. And Gbagbo almost served term at The Hague, for genocide and things like that he committed. No, but these are interesting dimensions of democracy, and I look at them as a friend of mine, the Argentinian political scientist, talk of the perpetual crisis of democracy. That democracy is an endless struggle, once it has started, between those who want to advance democracy and those who want to push it back. But that the importance of democracy is that it has raised certain possibilities which people look forward to. And when those possibilities are unfulfilled, it raises expectation that much higher. So I think I think one of the greatest things that happened during the transition in Africa was what has become the ritualization of fixed term. If fixed term was not there will be many more who will be waiting to rig and stay in power. So I'm happy this is happening in Cote d'Ivoire, and there was even a rumor of coup d'etat. I think the lesson for us in Nigeria, in the present circumstances, is that when people feel that the weight of the state is being used for partisan electoral political gain, you may appear to be doing well, but people are looking back. And when they hit back, resist you. You may even be inviting people to take over government who should not take over government. So the point I'm making is that let us respect the rule of law. Let us not use the powers of the state in a way that is unconstitutional to further our own partisan political party interests.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Adele Jinadu. On that note, I would like to thank you indeed. As we take a short break here on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.